welcome to the Popcorn Junkies. Welcome to this review of a film called The Mastermind, a big title, a dramatic title, for a kind of dramatically undramatic, dramatic film. It's a curious film, this one. It's an American indie film. It's directed by an American indie director, Kelly Reichardt. The only film I can think of on the channel that we've reviewed by her was First Cow, which was a kind of slow, meditative, meditation on a couple of early settlers settling the Bay Area and the kind of the grisly end they come to. Her tone, her rhythm, her style of filmmaking is slow, it's measured, it's not about kind of great, long, sophisticated, complicated sequences. It's, you could end up asking the question, what exactly is the appeal of her films? But they do exert a strangely sort of hypnotic appeal, if I'm brutally honest. She's directed other films like Meek's Cut Off. That was a kind of her breakthrough feature film. Night Moves, I think had Jesse Eisenberg in it, Certain Women. First Cow, as I said. Now, of most note probably with it is it stars Josh O'Connor. We all know Josh O'Connor. He was in, what was he in? Was it Champions? What was that? No. Was that the name of the film in which... Challengers. It wasn't Champions, it was Challengers. Anyway, it stars Josh O'Connor. He also played Prince Charles in The Crown. And there's something about him that's kind of intriguing me with every performance I see of his. At first I didn't think much of him, and then just the more I see him, the more I kind of go, I kind of find you interesting. This also stars Alana Haim, who you'll recognise from Licorice Pizza. I think she's also a singer. And so what is this? This is set in 1970. The whole thing is shot through with a kind of earthy, ochre, almost overexposed or badly exposed film. You know when you go through your kind of photo album and you kind of find those really out of date 4:5 ratio, sort of not Polaroids, but kind of colour photographs, very square, very colourful, but kind of faded colour. There's a sepia tint to the colour. Well, this whole film feels like the brightness was slightly too high and the contrast could have been turned up a little bit. But that kind of adds to it. So it's quite dreamy. It's quite atmospheric. Licorice Pizza had something similar to it. So it's very much set in the 70s. This is basically a heist movie, but you would be forgiven for thinking it's not really a heist movie in the vein of, say, something like Ocean's 8, Ocean's 11, Ocean's 96, or whatever they were. This is a very, very low-key, almost, I would say, actively undramatic heist movie. And I sometimes wonder whether that's what this director's about trying to actively undramatize drama so that something else emerges, because something else does emerge. I'm not quite too sure what, but you do end up focusing on something else. It's a film that's quite slow. It's a film that's quite undramatic. I mean, she edited it herself, the director, but it's it's well edited, but it's very functionally edited. There's no sophisticated setup, sequences, scenes. It's about characters, but the characters themselves are also they don't particularly say too much that's revealing. So you're kind of offered almost very unconversational, quiet characters going about essentially something quite dramatic, which is he basically masterminds. I mean, the irony is that the whole film is one long, shaggy dog story about him being a mastermind, but his mastermindery basically doesn't achieve any of the end results. He just ends up compromising himself, compromising his family, his children, compromising his wife, who holds down an office job, and compromises even his friends who are involved in the heist. And you wonder why he's done it. So this becomes kind of, and I think Josh O'Connor brings an enormous amount of kind of ambiguous, ambivalent, behind the eyes wonder as to what makes this guy tick. He's not particularly likable. He's not particularly nice. He's not a particularly great dad. They've got two boys that are kind of badly behaved because they come from a dysfunctional home. He has no real relationship of note with his wife, played by Alana Haim. He's asking his mum for money, and she's kind of like a bit kind of curious and querulous as to whether he's actually going to use this money for anything meaningful. He kind of is aimless, and yet at the same time has a certain sort of self-assuredness that you think is totally misplaced given his lack of status. I think there's something ironic to be had around the fact that, you know, he's involved and interested in stealing art. So he basically enacts the heist. The heist happens in a bungled fashion. We're in the 70s, so there's no CCTV. He takes the paintings and hides them in a barn where there's loads of pigs behind him. In interview, the director said she was less interested in the heist itself, but was more interested, in fact, in the kind of unraveling of the mastermind's mind. And I think there's, you know, in one way that does work, because there are moments in this where you're kind of, I mean, I watched this whole thing with a kind of arched eyebrow and a furrowed brow, sort of kind of confused at how inept he was and how he truly believed he was going to get away with this, albeit, you know, it was a different time. And there's this moment where once he's got the paintings in his house, and they're not particularly great paintings, they're kind of abstract art. You sort of think, oh, is there a marketplace for this? Are they going to be missed even? And it was a very unnotable kind of gallery as well as a kind of regional gallery. It wasn't like the Louvre, or it wasn't, you know, the Museum of Modern Art or anything like that. And there's a point when he's in his house and he sort of puts one of the paintings on the wall for storage, and you sort of think, well, I wouldn't do that, because you're not going to be able to get rid of it. I mean, I just kept getting really kind of I kept feeling anxiety about them tearing the paintings or scratching the painting. I think one of the funniest moments, or one of the best moments, was when he was rendezvousing with one of his kind of co-heist kind of guys. And whilst they met in a kind of car park, suddenly the heavies came in and then took Josh O'Connor off and basically so the whole kind of mastermind, the whole kind of heist process, not only kind of he barely gets them out the door, it's then in the papers, but he then hides them in the most ineffectual way, but he even then gets kind of gotted by people he owes money to. And so really this becomes a kind of curious, kind of shaggy dog story about a man in a hole. It's kind of odd. There are kind of some nice moments. For example, he kind of takes up sort of home with, or he drops in on his kind of art college buddy, and he goes into hiding with his friends from art school, and the guy who's from First Cow, he was kind of like amused at whether he's actually stolen these artworks, whereas the woman, you know, his female friend from art school, I thought she was his sister, she's a bit more judgmental, and she says don't come round her again, and you sort of think, I kept just watching and looking. Josh O'Connor is almost inscrutable, and yet at the same time he has that kind of completely kind of misguided, deluded sense of purpose. I mean, he has no purpose, because by the end of the film he's got neither 2 cents to rub together. He can't get a bus anywhere. He gets caught up in a protest, sort of Nixon, an anti-Vietnam War protest, and then inadvertently he gets snabbed anyway by the coppers. It's quite bleak. It's quite depressing. It's quite ordinary. It's anti-drama. And as I said earlier, I just wonder whether this director is dedicated to the idea of hoovering out conventional storytelling in preference for, and I think this is a good idea, whether this works, I'm not entirely sure, in preference for the process and the unraveling of the person who conducted the heist. I felt, if I'm brutally honest, I needed a bit more of what other people thought of him. I thought the strongest sequence in the whole film was when he was holed up with his art buddies from art school, and the woman, the female friend, the partner of his male friend, was really, you know, disappointed, judgmental, dissatisfied. I found that the most powerful, because you felt there was a real sense that there was obviously a relationship to be had. I think one of the things I struggled with in this film a little bit was I couldn't understand why anyone had any time for him in the first place. I couldn't see any charm. I couldn't see any skill. And he certainly wasn't even skilled in his masterminding of a heist. I mean, quite the opposite. It all goes terribly wrong. You know, the drama, the story plays out in the papers. His father is very judgmental. His mother is very strict. I didn't even really feel the sense of stress. He didn't feel stressed. Josh O'Connor's character wasn't particularly stressed, though he was forever in stressful situations. And I suppose there's a sort of truism in that. I think we could probably all think of people in our lives who, certainly I look at them and I think, God, if I was you, I'd be infinitely more stressed and self-aware and worried about the consequences of what you're doing than you seem to be. Aren't you slightly worried that people might think you're a bit fucking useless or weird or selfish, or he had an unjustified swagger And I couldn't really even work out. There was no warmth between him and his own children. One of his children kind of engages in a lock-in in his bedroom because he actually prefers to stay with and wants to stay with his dad. There's a moment when he's meeting his kind of cohort in the car park before the kind of big heavies, the mafia, kind of kidnap him, where his son is left in the car with the guy he did the heist with. And you sort of thinking, I was left thinking, there could have been some kind of rich moments here of intergenerational people placed in each other's company that wouldn't normally be in each other's company. Like, I thought we were going to get a strong scene. We didn't really get a strong scene there. And so I forever felt like, whilst I was willing to get on board with a slow pace, a resolutely undramatic story, a really unlikable, but also not that complicated lead character, I was willing to do all of those things, but I think I just needed a little bit more of something, and I'm not entirely sure what that is. That's not to say that coming in at nearly 2 hours long, I wasn't bored, and it is slow at times, and do not go and see this because you're wanting to watch a clever heist movie. I mean, I think the drama around things like Ocean's 8, Ocean's 9, or whatever it's called, it's the sophistication, it's the will they, won't they. There really isn't any will they, won't they in this. I mean, there is a little bit, but it's so bungled and confused, and because it's the 70s and they've got tights on their heads, and they're literally caught shoving paintings into sacks and things like that. I suppose, on reflection, it is funny. There's a sort of absurdism to the situation and the setup and the ambition and the misplacedness of it all. Was there something funny to be had in even his wife seemed to have totally zero regard for him. His parents sort of had zero regard for him. No one had any regard for him. He was kind of cut adrift right at the beginning. And then I was trying to work out, well, is his connection with, I didn't know whether I needed something like he was looking for some kind of purpose or connection. And there was a reason that the heist was happening with art pieces, because actually he failed as an art student too, so he had to steal art in order to stay connected to art. I think there might have been something nice in there. She asks you to do all the work, really, as a director, and I did do all the work, and I kind of found it mildly diverting. A lot of critics are saying, oh, it's that spare, sparse, unhurried, counterintuitive storytelling. Yes, but I think I need a little bit more kind of, not steerage nor explanation, but I just think I need a little bit more work on creating the depth of character, the depth of situation, the depth of world, if you like. In the end, I found it almost like a very sort of two-dimensional, one-column sketch like you used to get in 70s magazines, like, you remember the kind of Love Is and things like that, and Peanuts. It sort of had that. It didn't really amount to too much, and yet it felt like it could have amounted to a lot more. So all in all, it was kind of okay. I didn't find it particularly thought-provoking. And so to that end, I would probably, if I had to score this, I'd give it about 46 out of 100. I know on Rotten Tomatoes everyone's loving it. I mean, she is an auteur. She is an authorial director. She is about allowing time and space and giving airtime to the incidental and the boring and the odd. But there was just nothing that particularly stood out as surprising or different or must see. So in the process of trying to say to you, should you go and see it, I don't think you're going to miss too much here. It's a badly conducted heist by a guy who isn't a mastermind, who doesn't particularly deserve the love and affection of any of his family, whether his parents, his children, or his wife, finds himself in a bit of a rough end in the end, but possibly finds himself where he should end up after having mugged an old woman for her money. He's not nice. I suppose as a character portrait of total delusion, self-importance, a belief that even right at the end you could phone up people that you've dropped in total hell and have abandoned, and you've left them wondering what the fuck's going on with you as a father and as a husband and as a son, and you still ask them for some money to get you on a bus somewhere. Selfish, self-centered, egotistical, hubris. It's a film about hubris, but he's a bit threadbare as a character. I mean, just for example, let me give you 3 quotes that describe this film. One of them says, "This film connects to something larger about an America losing its way." Not entirely sure, even with the sort of context of Nixon and Vietnam and all the rest of it. He was aimless. And Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian says, quietly gripping, insofar as you're gripping the edges of your seat because you're in a seat in a cinema. And The Hollywood Reporter says, an artful exercise in genre reinvention. I mean, it's anti-genre, it's anti-drama. And I think, yes, there is room in cinema and storytelling to go that route. But I think if you go anti-drama, I think perhaps, potentially, possibly, you maybe need even more of a character to indulge in and roll around with and have questions about and wonder about. Although I liked Josh O'Connor in it, I liked his kind of surfaceness. I think his character was very surface level, and he was very surface level too. And I could have done with a few maybe moments of wondering what was making him tick. And I don't feel we were ever given time to just wonder what on earth made him tick, because nothing that was making him tick was working. And even when he put the painting on the wall, see, the two moments that are most significant for me, him putting one of the artworks that he's nicked on the wall and looking at it, but that would kind of disappeared quickly. And the moment with him and his art buddies, where he was kind of clearly really being judged by his female art buddy from college. I liked that scene. There were some awkward moments. There's a lot of awkward pauses in this, and I suppose you could argue that's very Pinteresque and all the rest of it. But I think it's an acquired taste for many.